Hello people, welcome to my channel, Ask Pastor Nike. I am Nike Ayola. Today's episode number 45 is an excerpt from my book, From Princess to King, A New Way to Be Woman. I hope you have at least ordered your minimum of 2 copies by now. That is if you haven't already received your order. And of course, there is the ebook available as well if that is your preference. One of the questions that came out of episode 41 was about older marriages and the peculiar issues they may face, especially in relation to infidelity. And that's what I'll be talking about in this video, the challenges older marriages may face and how we can deal with them. A few years ago, I was the only woman in the company of about 5 men, and there were older men who were accomplished in their chosen careers and who also doubled as associate pastors in the various ministries where they worshipped. Now, I paid no attention to their conversation until I heard them complain about women taking their good-hearted husbands for granted. I felt the need immediately to speak up for women everywhere at this point, and I tried to interject that the woman only responded to stimulus. If a woman gets uncompromising loyalty from her husband, she will give up her soul for him if need be. But the reverse is also true, because she can make life very uncomfortable and even unbearable for her spouse if she senses disloyalty or betrayal. Even though I had a more compelling argument, at least in my own opinion, I was totally outnumbered, and we settled for a compromise that each one of us owed the duty of having a down-to-earth and needed conversation with the categories of people in our different groups, in my case, women and wives, on where and how we are failing to meet each other's expectations. Irrespective of where we are on the timeline of our relationships, there are certain scenarios that have the potential of becoming recurring issues if not properly addressed. And like the saying that the higher you go, the deeper you fall, couples who have been married for more years are particularly vulnerable. This is because of a syndrome that I have chosen to call settling, which means becoming complacent and accepting the available standard. Jeremiah chapter 48 and verse 11 from the New English Translation says, "From its earliest days, Moab has lived undisturbed. It has never been taken into exile. Its people are like wine allowed to settle undisturbed in its dregs, never poured out from one jar to another. They are like wine which tastes like it always did, whose aroma has remained unchanged." Whenever anything, living or non-living, has been left undisturbed for a long time, everything about it remains the same. There will be no growth, no new challenges for improvement, no drive, and possibly no goals as well. Its taste and aroma become predictable and uninteresting. Settling can therefore bring drudgery into life and relationships. It will be advantageous for all women to be aware of seemingly innocuous issues that can subtly creep into our marriages and relationships as a result of settling. And I'm going to list them. Number 1, assumption that length of union inoculates against problems. Couples who have successfully lived together over many decades usually offer the same explanation for how they manage to achieve the feat. They never stopped working at the relationship. Many people looking in from the outside can assume that, because a couple has been together for long, they are immune to the various problems that arise with relationships. But the disaster is really when the 2 people involved themselves buy into that fallacy. Just like a human being without nourishment will eventually die, no matter how old or young he or she is, love that is malnourished stands the chance of fading away. There are no marriages made in heaven after all. Every successful union is a result of painstaking efforts and constant ongoing attempts to keep doing the things that make the relationship special, and the exploration of new excitements that can be imported into the relationship to further move it forward. Conversations about serious and mundane topics, laughing unashamedly about yourself and each other, agreeing to disagree on little things, showing affection in the presence of others, in simple ways like holding hands, learning new skills or leisure activities together. These are some of the things that couples should keep on their activity list if they want their relationship to survive the whole length of time. Number 2, keeping your spouse's heart and interest. There is no doubt that as a wife, you won your husband's heart just like he won yours. But the challenge is how to keep your bounty going forward. Some of us stop trying to keep our spouse's interest alive, and a few do not even consider it necessary because, we settle after marriage. Many husbands complain about their wives' dowdy looks, especially after becoming mothers. Now, no matter how spiritual or unaware a man or woman are, there was a level of underlying attraction that made them single each other out. That attraction has to be nurtured by all means possible through good personal grooming that both the husband and wife appreciate and that also makes them feel good about themselves. As a woman myself, I know that it can be challenging with all the different responsibilities that we have to add looking good for your spouse and yourself to the list. It is definitely easier and more comfortable sometimes to be laid back, about such things, especially within the confines of your own home where nobody is watching, until we remember that such lapses are some of the reasons why some other relationships have plunged down the slippery slope of separation and divorce. Personal grooming, good housekeeping habits, and making lovely gestures towards each other are essential to keeping love alive. Number 3. Showing gratitude. And you will remember that if you listen to the last episode, that it was one of the 2 things that I mentioned there. Familiarity breeds contempt. That was a phrase that I heard over and over again when I was in high school, and it is a fact, especially when we allow ourselves to settle in our relationships. It is easy to stop being appreciative of things done for us by people who are the closest to us. Little favors that we fuss over when done by people outside our family circles often go unappreciated and even sometimes unacknowledged when offered by loved ones. It is very easy to take each other for granted by virtue of proximity. Saying thank you for little and big things should be carefully cultivated, no matter how long the relationship has lasted. Showing gratitude for things that are your spouse's assumed traditional responsibilities will always make him or her want to do more. Acknowledging your spouse's skills and special abilities is also guaranteed to make the relationship a more amicable one. Everyone loves to feel important and loved for who they are and for what they do. There is also a sense of entitlement that couples who have been married for a while have to guard against. Any spouse will feel cheated if their faith and discipline choices are used to blackmail them into staying in the relationship. It is unfair to be flippant about your spouse's feelings or desires because you know that their sense of good judgment and fear of God will keep them by your side. Many men and women have become bitter against their spouses because of this, and it was the major reason for the complaints and sentiments expressed by the company of 5 men that I mentioned earlier. Honor your husband's commitment by doing things that will make him happy, and men should do the same for their wives. The beneficial fallout is that you are also sowing seeds of happiness that must spill over into your life as well. Number 4. Unresolved anger and disappointment. And this was also the second point that I mentioned in the last video. It is possible for 2 people to live together as complete strangers for many years if there are unresolved issues that create emotional distance between them. Women are specifically affected because we are not equipped with the skills to isolate a problem without allowing it to affect every other aspect of our lives like men are. And coupled with the fact that we have this uncanny ability to keep mum after we have experienced deep hurt, women are prime candidates for harboring bitterness and anger over indeterminable periods of time. A great example is the reluctance of many women, and for some the total inability to respond to sexual intimacy when there are unresolved issues that impact directly and even indirectly on their emotions. Bitterness actually develops from unresolved pain, anger, hurt, or disappointment. This is why a resolution must be actively pursued each time an issue capable of destabilizing the relationship occurs, if that problem is to be denied the oxygen it needs to take on a life of its own. At times like this, silence is not golden. Years of hurt and disappointments layered upon each other will result in bitterness no matter how emotionally strong any human being is. This is why the scripture enjoins us to never go to bed angry. Anger and bitterness eat up the person literally, and an angry or bitter woman is unlovely and unlovable because ugliness in the soul is reflected by our physical appearances and behaviors. No woman should desire to be in this position. And even if as a woman you attempt to push the emotions to the recesses of your mind, I guarantee that the issue will keep popping up again and again and at the most inopportune times. Sweeping any problem under the carpet for both men and women can be likened to folding away a beloved dress with deep stains. It will only be in a worse condition when it is brought out in the future. We must therefore learn to speak up and share our thoughts with our spouses about anything that makes us uncomfortable in the relationship. Men, Please note that we women are talkers, so when a woman is not talking, trouble is brewing. The antidotes to bitterness and anger are speaking up and being willing to forgive and make allowances for the other person's shortcomings, knowing fully well that we are imperfect ourselves. Speaking up is especially important because your anger or disappointment can be based on a wrong evaluation of an event, or on a rumor, or something that a simple explanation can resolve. Some relationships have been destroyed because either the husband or the wife believed a lie instead of seeking to know the truth by inquiry. It is our responsibility to guard our hearts diligently, and we must not give room for unhealthy thoughts to take residence there. Ephesians chapter 4 verses 25 to 27 and 31 and 32 from the New Living Translation says, "Stop telling lies. Let us tell our neighbors the truth, for we are all parts of the same body. And don't sin by letting anger control you. Don't let the sun go down while you are still angry, for anger gives a foothold to the devil. Get rid of all bitterness, rage, anger, harsh words, and slander, as well as all types of evil behavior. Instead, be kind to each other, tender-hearted, forgiving one another, just as God, through Christ, has forgiven you." Finally, on this point, please remember that forgiveness is a two-way gift. When you give this gift to someone or whoever has offended you, you are giving it to yourself as well, the gifts of peace of mind, loveliness of soul, unfettered friendship with others, and so much more. Number 5, third-party interference. Now, this is a topic for a whole episode, but I'll try to fit something into the little time that we have. In-law palaver precedes the actual tying of the knot for some relationships, so a third-party interference is an issue that cuts across all marriages, irrespective of how old it is. Even though feelings run deep and sometimes amok, when third-party and in-law interferences come up, the problems that arise are pretty simple to analyze and resolve, in my opinion. There are 2 simple observations that should help in brokering peace. First of all, almost all the interference that creates issues are from females. I am a woman too, and believe me, I know what I'm talking about. Problems come consistently from mothers and mothers-in-law, sisters and sisters-in-law, daughters and daughters-in-law, aunties and aunties-in-law, female cousins and cousins-in-law, and speaking truthfully, if and where there are males mixed up in the fray, they have been instigated and roped in by their female relatives. It therefore means that it is majorly a woman thing, and women are in the best position to find the solutions to these issues. Secondly, every daughter and sister will eventually become a mother-in-law and or daughter-in-law in the future. The reasons why a wife's mother-in-law seems to interfere in her relationship with her son will all become clearer when she becomes a mother-in-law herself. So, a wife or daughter-in-law's vindication can only become appreciated when she is careful not to replicate her mother-in-law's condemned behaviors whenever she becomes the mother-in-law. The command of Jesus that we treat others the same way we would like to be treated, and the understanding that the husband will be partial to his mother the same way our sons and daughters will be partial towards us in the future, are the 2 suggestions that I believe can bring peace to every relationship where there are in-law issues. Both women, that is the wife and the mother-in-law, must remember that the law of sowing and reaping is sacrosanct. If the wife treats her mother-in-law like a mother, and the mother-in-law truly treats her daughter-in-law as a daughter, most marriages will enjoy great peace. And when the wife empowers her husband to show love, consideration, and honor to his parents, she will enjoy the best of everyone, including her own children in the future. Number 6, loyalty matters. The issue of loyalty is closely related to third-party interference, but it is important enough to stand on its own as one of the major issues that relationships can have. Loyalty is faithfulness to commitments and obligations, and unfortunately is one major ingredient for successful relationships that is either grossly lacking or has been watered down. A cursory look at the vows taken at weddings, at least for those who got married in the Christian church, shows that many do not pay attention to the promises they are making. It says, "And forsaking all others, cleave to only him or her for as long as you both shall live. To have and to hold, from this day forward, for better or for worse, for richer or for poorer, in sickness and in health, to love and to cherish," and so on. Loyalty therefore demands that each partner in the relationship must stick around through thick or thin. That is the bottom line. Unfortunately, many imagine that there is an escape clause that is labeled feeling that gives them a pass from the commitment of their vows. If commitment was based on feelings, there would be no marriage standing today. Loyalty means that you can be depended upon to stand by your promises and obligations even when you don't feel like it. If it ever happens that your heart is no longer in it, you must work at bringing your heart back. After all, it is your heart. A husband or wife's commitment and vows trumps their feelings every time, and commitment is not diminished by time or circumstances. There is a verse in the Bible that captures this powerfully. Psalm 15 and the latter part of verse 4 says in the Passion Translation, "They make firm commitments and follow through, even at great cost." While God's Word Translation renders it as, "The one who makes a promise and does not break it, even though he is hurt by it." If our feelings were the major drivers of our actions, there would be plenty enough reasons why both men and women should walk away from their marital vows. Sagging boobs, bald heads, weight gain, pot bellies, and such physical alterations, to mention a few, come with the package of matrimony. But loyalty is beyond simply staying in the relationship. It means that the man or woman can be trusted to have the other's back 24/7. It means your spouse can go to bed with both eyes closed because they know that you always have their best interests at heart. It means that even when something goes wrong, the thoughts of betrayal never arises because your spouse's intentions are clear and unambiguous. Every woman deserves this kind of loyalty, and every woman owes this kind of loyalty to her husband as well. Like I mentioned earlier, a woman who knows with certainty that her husband stands with her can in turn lay down her life for him. This loyalty is best displayed when third parties are involved and in the open, not secretly after the damage has been done. And even though there may be differences in perception and opinions, they can be trashed out privately between the husband and the wife later. Quite often, when third parties perceive a common front in a relationship, they back down. The peace and progress of your home should be more important than people's evaluation of your character. And I added that for people, especially men, who are overly concerned about people perceiving them as not strong enough. Now, everything that I have shared in its entirety in this video is from my book, and I sincerely hope that your interest has been piqued by now. It's an excellent Christmas gift, and I recommend it to you for all the men and women in your life. Finally, on Tuesday of next week, I will celebrate my 60th birthday. I am so thankful to God and grateful to my parents who are in heaven already, and all my loved ones, some who have been in my life for the entirety of my 60 years, and others that came in as I journeyed along. Now, all I'm asking now is that you give me a gift of sharing my channel with all your contacts. Thank you very much, and see you next Friday. Shalom.